Impacts is something that I've raised in the book because it is really, really important, and it's not something that has been examined sufficiently to date. There are lots of different tourism types that I have identified similarities with, and I believe that it's really important that we do actually learn lessons from those. So, for example, volunteer tourism, I've identified has very close ties with TEFL Tourism. Obviously, volunteer tourism is generally not paid, although there is a whole debate around that, but generally it's not paid, and TEFL Tourism generally is. So it's not the same, but there are many similarities, and within the volunteer tourism industry, there have been many studies looking at the many negative impacts that might have. So I think it's really important that we learn lessons from the volunteer tourism industry or similar industries that we can actually apply to the concept of TEFL tourism, so that we don't make the same mistakes. There are lots of examples of impacts. Positive impacts, obviously, it can be a great way to enhance the levels of English in a community. It can be a great way to promote a destination, to perhaps open up new businesses, to enhance the economics in the area. When you bring in tourists, they might want to go to restaurants or stay in different venues, or they might want some kind of entertainment. All those sorts of things bring in economic benefits, so that's great. One of the main areas is probably the cultural impact of TEFL tourism. One of the areas I address in the book is the concept of ethnocentrism. And when we from Western countries fly out to a developing country to teach English as a foreign language, we arrive with all of our own preconceived ideas of what that is, what teaching should look like, what a lesson should look like, what sort of things we should talk about, what sort of examples we should give. And actually that might not lie well with their own values and culture and customs. And that's one of the problems, is that TEFL tourists are often not familiar enough with the local culture and with the local customs, and they might, through ignorance and naivety, they might actually offend the locals, and that can cause issues. For example, in Thailand, I actually worked in a school in Thailand for a little while, and in Thailand, as a mark of respect, you would always duck lower than people who are viewed as senior to you. So if a student was taller than me, they would duck down and go lower. And if I had a boss who I was taller than them, as I walked past them, I should duck down. And that's part of their culture. But if I don't know that, if I haven't been taught that, then I wouldn't do it, and they would find me very rude, and they wouldn't understand that. When we as TEFL tourists go over to a destination, we often have an expectation that we are going to earn a certain salary to maintain the lifestyle that we expect. That salary isn't always in line with local salaries, and there are many cases where an unqualified TEFL tourist, they might be 21 years old, straight from university, have never studied English, and they actually earn more than a qualified teacher in the destination who's been teaching for 20 years, because they're a white Western face and the qualified teacher is not. That causes its own problems. Obviously there's perhaps some feelings of uneasiness there. There might be resentment caused from the local people towards the TEFL tourists. There are also cases where it's more preferable to employ a TEFL tourist than it is a local teacher who may be perfectly capable of teaching English. But because then they haven't got an English accent or a Western English-speaking accent, they're the ones who are not employed. So it can potentially have a negative effect on employment in the local area, and it can cause displacement, in that people are left without a job because the TEFL tourist has come in and actually they've taken their job. Often the TEFL tourists are none the wiser, they won't realise this is happening, but this is definitely something that should be monitored and should be regulated.